So here we go. Welcome everyone. We are now over, oh wow, it's still, everyone's still coming in. We're at about 140 people joining us for this wonderful send-off. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the McGill community. You are now officially McGillians. My name is Jen Peterman and I'll be your moderator this evening. I am in the recruitment and admissions office, actually in enrollment services. So often I connect with you prior to this position where you've already been accepted and probably gone through a ton of different steps. So first and foremost, congratulations. Congratulations on all this hard work that you've done through high school and really kind of persevered over this past 18 months or so, working through a pandemic and really being successful. And so we're super thrilled that you're considering McGill. And also congratulations for taking those next steps. We often think that being admitted might be the hardest part, but actually going through Minerva registration, housing selection, and immigration documents might even be more challenging. So well done. Congratulations to all students and parents joining us and family members this evening. We also want to celebrate. McGill is heading into its 200th birthday celebration as we are in our bicentennial, which is super exciting. And as we are welcoming students to campus in the fall in person, so looking forward to seeing you in Montreal. I'm hoping there'll be lots of like individual cupcakes that we can share with you as all of these different fun activities are taking place for our bicentennial. So for tonight, we have a really exciting group of people that really want to share their feedback and insights to really help make the transition to university as smooth as possible. They have all lived through it and we've all worked through it a little bit. So we're really here to help you and support you. This is sort of part of the journey, shall we say, in terms of staying connected with us. This is one way to find out information and start building your network. But at the end of the session too, I'll let you know how you can stay connected with students in your region. Being kind of sponsored with our alumni relations brazen activity, where there'll be some networking that will happen later on this summer. So again, this is just one way to stay connected, but we'll definitely keep you up to date with sort of other events that you can do in the summer. So let's get started right away, because you don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from all these amazing panelists. But we are joined with some staff, students, and parents that are all McGillians. So first and foremost, and we're just going to wave, and I'm going to get them to introduce themselves a little bit later too. But I would really like to introduce you to Chris Stevens. He's part of our campus life and engagement team as a student life associate. So truly, the people that are bringing you to campus and taking care of you right from the beginning is the campus life and engagement team. So you'll hear from Chris in a few moments, actually. We also have Ava and Neil Merker, so we can wave here for them, and they're going to talk a little bit about their experiences, and Claire Williams. And so they're going to come in after Chris gives you a quick overview of some of the campus life and engagement activities and events coming up, and then we're going to dive into questions from you. So getting back to the sort of familiarity of the chat function, again, if you were to open that up and maybe as Chris is talking or we're dealing with our questions that are coming in, if you did want to pose a question, definitely use the chat function, and we have colleagues behind the scenes that are going to be answering some typed questions, so feel free to do it that way. And then if we start to see some common questions coming out, we're going to address them as a group as well, because not to worry, if you're worried about something or thinking something, chances are there's another 163 of you feeling or thinking the same thing. So feel free to use that chat. It's a really great way to keep us engaged. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and he's going to talk a little bit more about campus life and engagement. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Jen. Before we jump off, actually, I believe we have a poll we'd like to share just to gauge your interests for this session. There it is. So we're going to give you a little bit to answer the poll, and then we'll have a look at the results. Okay, I think we've had enough time. Let's have a look. All right, You definitely want to hear from our current students and parents, which is perfect. That's what we're here for, as well as preparatory ideas for the fall semester. We'll share some of that as well as a lot of advice for making the most of your first year. All right, thank you very much. So I'm just going to switch over to my PowerPoint here. Now let's see. Everyone should be seeing that. Okay. Thank you again, Jen, and thank you everyone who is attending tonight. My name is Christopher Stevens, and I'm the Student Life Associate with Campus Life and Engagement. My role at McGill is to develop orientation and transition programs for new students, and as such, I'm one of the people who is coordinating Orientation Week for you. Before I continue, I do want to give a shout out to our hosts today, the amazing McGill Alumni Association. I feel like when people think of the Alumni Association, they think it's just for graduates, and that's not the case. It's also for new McGill parents and for new students as well. They have a lot of programming for helping you transition into the university, like this very send-off. And they also provide parents with opportunities to connect with other parents. So please be sure to check out their wonderful suite of programming at the links provided in the handout you have access to. I also want to tell you a little bit about who we are at Campus Life and Engagement. Campus Life and Engagement is the one office really dedicated to helping new students transition into the McGill community. We're also the office that encourages, promotes, and connects you with amazing co-curricular and engagement opportunities here. Our goal really is to empower you and your capacity to make positive changes on campus and in your own communities. We do have a very specific focus on your first year. This here is our version of the McGill student life cycle. So from the time you apply to the time you graduate, Campus Life and Engagement is here to support you at every step through that journey. But like I said, we pay a special attention to the first year because it is so important to ensure that new students transition from high school into the university environment smoothly. And in doing so, they can really build a strong foundation from which to succeed. I do want to tell you about a lot of the resources and services we have here, but I don't want it to come from me. I want it to come from a group of students who have gone through this transition and who have really lived through their first year and beyond. Using their narratives as tips, I'm going to then introduce you to some of the amazing things they've mentioned. So first up, we have Caitlyn. Caitlyn is actually a recent graduate in the Faculty of Science. Caitlyn has this to say to new students: when I was in first year, I got involved with my residence council. We planned events such as coffee houses and socials to help build community in our building. Residence Life also offered tons of opportunities to both get involved in the McGill community and to make new friends. I was also able to get involved with the Science Undergraduate Society in my first year as an SUS rep for SMU and volunteered for the International Buddy Program. Get involved. So let's break down what Caitlyn is talking about here. First up, Caitlyn referenced the Student Society of McGill University, which we call SMU, which is your student, apologies. They are your student union at McGill. And within them, you'll find a first year council, which represents all first year students. And I really highly suggest that you get involved with them, that you contact them. We also find within SMU over 200 clubs and services that you have access to. Some of my favorites include the Chocolate Club or the Culinary Society. Caitlyn also brought up Residence Life, where you can get involved as a floor rep for your floor or on one of the many different residence councils. There are a lot of ways you can get involved if you're living in residence. Caitlyn brought up the Buddy Program, administered through International Student Services. The Buddy Program is a new student mentorship program specifically for international students. And you can also contact International Student Services for information on the International Health Insurance Plan, or if you need help with immigration, you can talk to their dedicated immigration advisors, and they can help you with things like study permits and the CAQ. As well, Caitlyn mentioned the Science Undergraduate Society. Each faculty has their own undergraduate society, And you can contact them, or rather you can contact their representatives for first-year students who can help you navigate your first year if you're finding yourself lost within your faculty. Next up, we have Katya. Katya is just finishing up her Bachelor of Arts, and she has this to say. There are tons of ways to get yourself prepared to enter the workforce at McGill. I got great advice from meeting with a career advisor at CAPS. Since I'm an art student, I could also secure an internship through the Arts Oasis in my second year of studies. I've also been building my resume by getting involved in extracurriculars that polish up practical skills like editing for one of the campus newspapers, the McGill Tribune, and attending Skills 21 workshops. Lastly, I've always struggled with budgeting, and if you're like me, be sure to visit SSAO to meet with a finance counselor. So Katya accessed the Arts Oasis, and that is the Faculty of Arts Student Affairs Office. In each faculty, you're going to find your own Student Affairs Office, and within those offices, you're going to find faculty advisors, and these people are going to be your best friends. They are going to help you plan out your degree, and they're going to support you throughout your studies, so do connect with them. You can also find out a lot more about internship opportunities, some of which may be taken for credit. Katya attended Skills 21 workshops. Skills 21 is a skills development program for undergraduate students at McGill. I really highly recommend you check them out if you want to practice things like your leadership skills, your presentation skills, or if you want to take workshops on topics like equity or wellness. It's all available through Skills 21. Katya accessed the Scholarships and Student Aid Office, and I know what you're thinking, but it's about a lot more than scholarships and student aid. They have a team of resourceful and skilled finance counselors who can help you come up with budget plans. They also offer the Frugal Scholars Program, again, to help you manage your money. And as well, they offer the Work Study Program for students who are receiving maximum financial aid. You can join that program to work and study while you are at McGill. Finally, Katya mentioned Career and Planning Services, or CAPS. Under CAPS, you can access your career advisors. And one question we always get is, should I talk to a career advisor this early on? And the answer is absolutely yes. It's never too early to meet with them, to have your CV reviewed, to talk about your career goals, and they're there to help you reach those goals. So check them out. Also under CAPS, you can find My Future, which is McGill's job posting platform where you can find all the jobs available for McGill students, as well as My Involvement, which hosts the co-curricular record. And this is a special document that records all of your extracurricular activities at McGill. Next up, we've got Sam. Sam is actually a PhD student in her third year. But Sam teaches courses in her department, and she has some advice for you along academic lines. Sam says, I would 100% recommend going to your prof and TA's office hours. They are always willing to help you succeed and can answer your questions. They're an amazing resource if you're looking for help. You can also get course-specific help for certain classes at tutoring services. As well, be sure to check out the McGill Writing Center for general help on essays and assignments. Try to make connections with other classmates or form study groups or group chats. These little teams helped me stay on track with coursework and were a great way to make new friends. Also visit the Office for Students with Disabilities. They can help you with academic accommodations and offer awesome study skills workshops. So Sam brought up the McGill Writing Center. They are very important for helping you develop your ideas, offering you advice and support for your assignments and for your essay writing. Sam also mentioned the Office for Students with Disabilities. You can meet with one of their Access Service advisors to find out about academic accommodations available to you, as well as their vast bank of learning resources. And these resources aren't just for students with disabilities, they're for everyone. As an example, they offer the tutorial services. And this is something I really want you to take away from this session, is that every new student receives 1 free hour of tutoring. You can also access peer tutoring from your student associations, and these are really well thought out and well vetted programs. Not anyone can be a tutor. The tutors you have access to are students who have done exceptionally well in their own courses. Finally, Sam mentioned peer networks and peer groups. Two great ways to find out more about them is by having a look at the Peer Support Center or the Students Helping Students website. There's a lot on offer, but one I would highlight is that you can find a lot of active listening, non-judgmental, one-on-one services, day or night. If you are feeling a little down or you just need someone to talk to, those are available to you. Last but not least, we have Kirsten. Kirsten is completing her Bachelor of Arts this year. And she says, "Hi, my name is Kirsten, and I would definitely suggest for all first-year students to take advantage of the different programs McGill has to support your mental and physical well-being. I found going to the Art Hive to create crafts and draw with friends when we had free time a great way to connect with others and de-stress. McGill also has a great fitness center with tons of equipment, which helped me to clear my mind during exam season when I usually get extra stressed out during that time. I also found participating in the McGill Yoga Club's free yoga sessions in collaboration with the McGill Office of Religious and Spiritual Life to be very beneficial to maintaining my mental health. Morsel even has a free online meditation guide, which I highly suggest everyone go check out. Also check out Community for Commuter Students." So, Kirsten accessed the Art Hive. The Art Hive is a part of the Student Wellness Hub. It is a one-stop shop for all health and wellness-related activities at McGill. As part of the Wellness Hub, you can find counselors, clinicians, and local wellness advisors. These are trained clinicians who are here to help you throughout your first year at McGill. There's also the support for commuter students with programs like Community, which is the commuters of McGill, a program offered by our office in conjunction with upper year commuter students. As part of this is the Junior Connectors program, which is a great opportunity for incoming first year students, commuter students, to get involved. And in August, as part of orientation, we hold a special orientation specifically for students living off campus. It's called Off Campus Connects, and I highly recommend you check it out. Kirsten also mentioned the McGill Office for Religious and Spiritual Life, which we refer to as Morsel, and the Yoga Club, which is one of those SMOO clubs. These are just two of the great resources available to help you maintain your inner peace, especially during those stressful times. And finally, Kirsten mentioned the Fitness Center, which is offered by our Athletics and Recreation Department. I really want to throw out that they have a whole suite of intramural programs such as dodgeball and things like that, as well as a lot of sports facilities. So do check them out if you're looking to work off some of the anxiety. Finally, we have me, and I do want to leave you with a little bit of advice, as I am also a McGill grad. I graduated a couple of years ago, but I just want you to know, each and every one of you, that we are here to support you, that there is a place for you here. McGill has so many resources, so many services, and we really want you to take advantage of them. It's really just do it. A lot of students hesitate and don't. We're here for you. We are offering these for you. Come take advantage. So this is just a quick overview of the wealth of services specifically available to first year students. We have McGill 101, which is your online orientation. You have access to it right now. We have our pre-arrival webinars. These are occurring every week throughout the summer on important topics like housing, academic culture, health and wellness. We have our emails, which we send to you weekly. These again cover very important topics like student finances, like healthcare and health insurance. You'll be hearing shortly from us about orientation. We have the Entering Class Facebook group. This is a place where you can connect with other new students as well, pose your questions to the community, and there are members of McGill staff who are there to help answer them. We have Orientation Week, including Frosh. This year, Orientation Week will be held from August 23rd to August 31st. We have Engage McGill. This is a website where you can find out all about the various engagement opportunities available to you at McGill and within Montreal. And then we have specific support for students in a lot of situations. So we have first generation student support, off-campus and commuter student support, Francophone student support, mature and transfer student support, And finally, let's not forget the work we do with our wonderful colleagues in Alumni Services or Alumni Association to bring you mentorship opportunities and programs such as this one. For your convenience, we have compiled links to all the resources we've mentioned today. And that concludes my presentation. I want to say thank you to everyone for listening. I do want to speak specifically to our incoming McGill parents as well as their students. If you ever need help at any point, whether it's now, whether it's during orientation week, the first year, or any year while you're at McGill, please reach out to Campus Life and Engagement. We have a dedicated frontline team who exists to help you find the answers and information you're looking for. And we have some contact info right here. So please reach out whenever you like. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it back over to Jen.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. And I think Chris highlighted a very important part about McGill is that there are absolutely a ton of resources available around the institution, and there are a lot of units at the institution that are here to support you. But also keep in mind, we are a very big university. We have over 40,000 students, and when you add in all of the staff and associates and such, we're probably closer to 50, 60,000. So picture us like a city. So sometimes it might be difficult to get all your questions answered in one location, but this is where you want to start navigating and getting to know all these services. But absolutely, as Chris mentioned, I think with Campus Life and Engagement, especially at this starting point, they definitely have a ton of information, and their website has a lot of information, which I think is fabulous. So be sure to check that out. We're going to bring our panelists on, but Chris, can I just ask you right away, because it's coming in the chat too, can you kind of give a quick overview, like 45 seconds, kind of what the orientation program will look like this August?
Yeah, so orientation is going to be split into two realms. There is the university-wide official McGill orientation, which Campus Life and Engagement hosts each year, in which we're going to have department orientations where students are going to be put in contact with their departments to see presentations, to hear about their programs and so forth, help them walk through any registration, things like that. There will be, as part of this orientation, a series of first-year success workshops, which will talk about academic expectations, things along those lines. And then we're going to have Frosh. Frosh is held by the student associations at McGill. Campus Life and Engagement does work with them to provide training and resources to ensure that Frosh is a safe and happy event for everyone. But unfortunately, means I have limited information about the specific events they're going to hold. They tend to be fun. This year, the official orientation will be held virtually, while Frosh will be a mix of virtual and in-person activities.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, it's a lot to think about, I think, right in one moment, but just again, think about this as a process and a journey. So you'll get details on orientation, as well as we're seeing some questions coming through the chat about housing. So once, and everyone has hopefully heard of where their buildings are or where you are in the order, of course, you'll get more information to that extent as well. So let's move into our Q&A piece. We have lots of questions coming into the chat. As we mentioned earlier, if you do have a question that you want to pose to our amazing panelists, please just click on that chat button, that little arrow that you're going to see in the control panel. And if you just type your question in there and hit submit, we have colleagues behind the scenes reviewing them. You might not see an answer right away. It'll be waiting until we're going to either type it or respond verbally. So in order to get to those question and answers, it's great if you would get to know our panelists a little bit. So I'm going to turn it over to our three panelists just to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their McGill background so far, and then we're going to jump into questions. So let's go alphabetically. Let's start with you, Ava.
Hi, I'm Ava. I'm going to be a second-year student at McGill in the College of Arts. So I'm a history major right now, and I have two minors, which are Indigenous Studies and Art History. That's what I've declared so far, but we're working on that. And I lived in New Residence Hall on Park for my first semester, and then I was home for my second semester. And obviously my experience with academics at McGill has been all online. So if you have any questions specifically about that, I know a lot about it.
Thank you. And where are you coming from, Ava? Where's hometown, I should say?
I live in New Jersey.
New Jersey. Perfect. Excellent. And over to Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire. I'm going to my final year here at McGill. I'm also a history student. I have a gender studies minor. My first year was 2017, so things might have changed since then, but I did live in Royal Victoria on university. And yeah, I'm originally from Philadelphia, and I've been living kind of like off campus ever since, and have a lot of experience with like on campus engagement and like employment and stuff. So I'm hoping I can be helpful in that capacity.
Perfect. Thank you, Claire. And by chance, Claire, during the pandemic when our campus closed, did you end up staying in Montreal or did you go back to the States?
Yeah, I was in Montreal all through the pandemic. I went home kind of like during the summer, but I came back at the beginning of the year.
Excellent. So we're going to come back to you about some Montreal things in a moment. And last but not least, Neil, hi. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody. My name's Neil Merker. Like Ava, I'm coming from New Jersey. Ava, my daughter, represents fourth generation McGillian. My wife is a McGillian, and her side before that. I also have a daughter who graduated in 2020, so I can speak to kind of all the years. And she is off actually to Cornell to get her PhD. And so that's kind of my history with McGill. I'm also a founding member of the U.S. Parents Leadership Council, which was recently formed. Interesting, just kind of giving a historical perspective. This council did not exist while my daughter Sarah was at McGill. And I actually felt myself a little bit, disconnected during those 4 years as a parent south of the border. And I also felt that McGill was missing an opportunity to engage with U.S. parents. And so I'm very excited that this council was formed in the last year or two and put together. It's an opportunity for parents in the U.S. to connect, which I have found very important, and an opportunity for McGill to engage with and to reach out to parents in the United States. I felt especially disconnected, especially when comparing myself to other parents who had kids at U.S. schools. So it was a little different, and there's no need to hide for parents to hide beneath, south of the border either. So it's been a great opportunity to meet with people. The Leadership Council members are invited to special engagements and seminars with researchers or leaderships, people in leadership at McGill or deans, and it's led by several co-chairs on both coasts. So it's just getting started. I encourage everybody to try to reach out and become a part of it. We're trying to grow it, trying to expand it. And I think it's a great way to become involved at McGill as a parent.
That's so exciting. We always talk about our students taking the initiative to create new clubs and do different things at McGill, and we have parents doing the same thing. So that's really exciting to actually hear about the council.
We don't have a parents yoga club though. We should work on that.
Add that to your agenda. Neil, if parents do want to join, how do they find out about this?
I think the best, I'm not 100% sure. I guess they should reach out to Joanna Gottlieb. I'm not 100% sure. I think you guys are going to be providing that information to anybody who may be interested. They can also feel to contact me directly.
Oh, it's fantastic. Thank you, Neil. And Alumni Relations will be sharing that information in the follow-up as well. So you'll be able to get connected with this council. Lots of questions coming in, so let's dive in. And definitely a lot of them are obviously related to the pandemic and how McGill is responding to that. So let's just start off a very quick overview. I don't want to take up too much time, but as we mentioned, and of course the emails you're receiving now and the content you're getting from student services and the faculties, all by your McGill email. So if you're not getting those emails, make sure you're checking your mcgill.ca email address, because that's how all of the university will communicate with you now. So step one, make sure you have that email address being checked. And then the second part is that, again, overall broad stroke kind of comment is that absolutely the campus will be open in September. Housing obviously is open, so students are expected to be in Montreal for the start of classes September 1. We're not really planning for a hybrid semester this year. in terms of the vaccination rollout and the restrictions and protocols that have been put in place in the province of Quebec and how they're kind of lessening now and things are starting to open up, it really is sort of the idea is to really have it as much back in person as possible. Of course, in certain scenarios where it might be larger classes or if there's still some physical distancing measures in place, again, there will be protocols put in, but definitely expect to be here in September to get those classes started. And on that side, then, how do you get here? Well, of course, you have to cross a border. So it's very important to note that if you're an international student, so you are in the US, you have US citizenship or another citizenship, you do need the 2 documents in order to be able to study in Canada full time. So the first document is called the Quebec CAQ, the Certificate of Acceptance to Study in Quebec. And the second document is the study permit, which is the Canadian immigration document. So those are 2 very, very important things. And hopefully you're already in the process of receiving those documents. If you are a US citizen as well, there's been some questions about applying for the study permit at the port of entry. And this is something Claire had to do several years ago, but is possible to do that this year in terms of being able to come have your CAQ and then at the port of entry. So if you're driving along the 87 or the 83 or the 89, which is the one coming from New Jersey, you can come through the port of entry and get your application process there. We are not immigration advisors. And so in terms of being able to provide you immigration advice, we're not allowed to do that. But we do have our advisors and counselors in the International Student Service office. So it's part of our student services. And they are the ones that are able to and allowed to provide this information. So if you go up in the chat, we have put a lot of links related to immigration in that chat, as well as some of the Canadian government like official websites, just in case if you're wondering, if I'm a parent, can I cross the border and come in with my child to drop them off at McGill? If I'm vaccinated, what does that mean? All of those details are in that chat, hopefully. And as we know, things do come up and change. So it's super important, again, as I would mention, just to check that email and just monitor everything that's happening in Canada, because again, it's a different situation daily. But that's, of course, if you are applying because you are not a Canadian, or you don't have a Canadian passport, you don't have Canadian residency or citizenship. Obviously, many of you might be joining that do have that Canadian status, and this is what Neil and Ava were like too. So maybe Neil, did you want to just mention a little bit about the process you went through in order to provide your Canadian documentation?
Okay. Yes, the main part, there is I don't know the exact website, but there are various legal situations that tell you. I think it was, for us, it was legal situation 8. If you go to, I don't know exactly what website to go. Ava, as a Canadian citizen, if you supply the required documentation, is entitled, well, the first part is easy, to establish Canadian, if you're a Canadian citizen, to establish Canadian, to get the Canadian tuition, supplying your passport, copy of your passport, your birth certificate, and a bunch of other things. Getting the Quebec tuition rate is slightly more difficult, and I think that's covered by legal situation number 8. For that, you need to provide evidence that Quebec is the first place that you have established residency in Canada, and for that you need to provide bank statements. You have to other evidence, a copy of your lease, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would advise you, if you want to get that tuition discount as early as possible, I think you must, in order to get it for the first semester, you must get all that documentation approved and in by December 1st. The other document is the document that you need to have signed in front of the at service point, is the Ava, what was the, if you recall the document, there was a legal document that you have to fill out and have notarized essentially at service point. So you get that in with all the backup documentation, and by December 1, and you are likely to get that tuition discount beginning in the first term. So that's That's it. The other thing is you're right. You do have to establish your residency in the United States. Going back 10 years, you need letters from your previous schools as well. So it's all listed there. But it's a
Perfect,
lot.
thank you.
It's a lot of paper.
I was about to say, get ready now because it is absolutely a lot of paperwork that you have to prove to the government. Yeah. So we put in the chat the legal documents website, and you can see section 8 is where you would want to go, and it will list all the documents that you need to provide. And a lot of these documents will be emailed or uploaded directly to our legal documents team to be able to process that. So that's definitely part of the journey, whether it is to go through the immigration process versus proving your Canadian status. Just as a tip and a reminder for all of our students that have just graduated, as part of your documents that you need to fulfill is we also want to see your final proof of graduation and that final transcript. So for many of you, if you are joining us from a U.S. high school, you can have your school email us that document so you don't have to worry about slow snail mail, maybe crossing the border. If you happen to know if your school is a parchment school, Maya Learning, Cialfo, all these technical terms, they can also submit it electronically through that platform. So if you have not done this yet, or you're about to kind of get that document organized, if you again go back up in the chat, we put in the website for our accepted students, mcgill.ca/accepted. And if you look at the tab that says next steps and you follow the legal document tab, and then the next one will be providing your proof of graduation and transcript. It has to be done officially. So a student emailing us their final transcript is not what we need. We really need it to come directly from the school or the ministry. So that's a big kind of next step, just to make, again, clarify all this paperwork and get your file all set to go. Now, in terms of some kind of prep questions, getting excited about that arrival in Montreal, let's turn it over to Ava and then Claire. What would you say, if you think back to when you were coming to McGill for the first time, and anything through your career so far at McGill, what would you say would be some of the important things that international students should know about McGill, or sort of this whole experience to date? So Ava, maybe we'll start with you and go to Claire.
Well, as a Quebec citizen,
We seem to have lost her.
or a Canadian citizen trying to establish Quebec residency, I was in contact with Service Point. Oh, is it on my screen? Hello? Okay. I was in contact going back and forth with Service Point, and they do respond. It takes a few days, but just keep on top of those emails. Sometimes they respond faster than other days, but if you have to make a deadline, give yourself some time, and also just email them with any questions. They will answer you, and they are helpful in terms of letting you know where you stand with all your immigration status and legal documents and what McGill has and what they still need from you.
Sorry, Claire, anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, I think that's great advice for sure. Definitely keep in contact with McGill, and for preparing to come, it's a lot about it's a lot of just documentation, especially I remember going to get my study permit at the border. You really have to have kind of everything in your little dossier. But I would say keep in touch also with campus life and engagement, and a lot of the offices dedicated to first year students. There's a lot of more resources than I think there seems because there's so many resources, they sometimes get lost. So definitely check those out online, and look at all the links in the emails, and they'll help you get ready.
Perfect. Thank you, Claire. I'm going to keep you on, Claire, because you mentioned you lived at Solon Hall, which is sort of an apartment style housing where really you had to bring, was it Solon Hall? Maybe I made a mistake.
I lived at RBC.
Oh, sorry, RBC. Solon Hall, not for you. I don't know why I thought Solon Hall. Apologies. But my next thought was also that you moved off campus, so you're living in Montreal. So we're getting some questions just about what students should bring maybe to Montreal, what they can buy in Montreal, and can you just talk a little bit about the commerce exactly and accessibility of things that exist a little bit in Montreal, and any sort of tips on really what to bring as from the States essentially?
Yeah, I would say first year in dorms, number one thing is bring a fan. I think people don't think that it's going to be hot the first couple months, but it is hot September and half of October. So I would definitely go for that. In terms of dorm stuff, my family had just like a really small car, so we kind of opted to do like, I only brought what I wanted to bring with me from home that was like super important or sentimental, and most of our like dorm essentials we bought here. Like we took like a big IKEA trip. If you go to Montreal or Saskatchewan, there's like lots of like home stores where you can get like everything you need essentially like in one shopping trip day. So I would kind of say like bring like your one of a kind stuff that like matters to you or that's important. Use your packing space for that. And then stock up on dorm essentials when you get here.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, Montreal definitely has a lot of shopping, and of course now with Amazon and all these online deliveries, it is possible to get a lot of things delivered. Did you actually have things delivered to your dorms, Ava and Claire, by chance? And just food too?
I lived in New Residence Hall, which is one of the hotel style dorms, and I do remember like I definitely ordered a few things. I also brought some stuff with me, like my bedding, and I bought some other stuff while I was moving in because I wasn't exactly sure what I needed for the hotel style dorm. Like I didn't need a fan, there's AC in those. But I do remember a lot of people getting packages delivered all the time of random things. People would order food and yeah, like Amazon packages, because especially with COVID, people weren't sure what they would need for spending so much time in their dorms. But yeah.
So true. Yeah, no, it's definitely as a city, we're pretty accessible, which is great. Let's turn over to Neil for a second, just on speaking of spending money on a lot of things being delivered, but just the finance piece, of course, is really interesting, especially if you're coming from another country and establishing a bank account, a cell phone, and being able to stay in connection. Any advice on that side, Neil, like in terms of student accounts, as well as just supporting someone that's across the border?
Again, and I'll also flip it to Claire in a bit. For Ava as a Canadian, it was a little bit easier because she had a social insurance number. So she was easily allowed to, easily able to open up a bank account and establish what she needed there. So that was not difficult for us at all. I can't speak to it from an international student standpoint.
Yeah, I can comment a little on that. I do remember like I set up a lot of my stuff like through orientation week when there were like stands on campus. But it's not like super hard to open an account here. Like my parents came with me to open mine, and then they kind of like transferred my like monthly budget like into that account. But you can sign up pretty easily for a bank account like as an international student. There's no like particular extra barriers.
One thing that I found when I brought my daughter 5 years ago, my eldest daughter, I thought I would need to get her a cell phone, like a Canadian cell phone. And that turned out to be unnecessary because most of the, most of the plans in the U.S. have, roaming North America on it. So phone calls to and from Canada are now free. That was not the case when she first entered McGill. So, but that all ended up okay. So mostly on your cell phones, you shouldn't need to change anything.
Thank you. I'm going to come to Chris for a second in terms of some student account questions, but Claire or Ava, as you were crossing the border, questions just coming about like if you did pack up stuff, was it easy to get across the border with everything you were bringing in terms of, let's say, moving in? Did you have any complications at the border, if you remember?
I did not. I drove with all my stuff and there weren't any complications. They just ask you, are you bringing any like alcohol or things like that you're not allowed to bring across the border, but there's no issue if you're just bringing stuff for your dorm room.
Perfect. Same for you, Claire?
Yeah, same. I just drove up. I remember they had us kind of like pulled to the side, and I had like everything was like stacked to the top when I moved in. And they just kind of like opened the trunk and like poked through and yeah, asked the same kind of question. Okay. It took like 10 minutes total.
Perfect. What I would recommend too is probably don't overpack. I mean, especially I think the priority things that you want to bring either are your laptop or any of the tech that you're really comfortable using. Obviously, you might have that with you already. But keep in mind, some of these spaces you're moving into might be smaller than the rooms you're accustomed to at home. And you'll see, of course, a lot of the furniture is already built in terms of desk, bed, lamp, chair, mini fridge, and things like that. So really kind of come with your essentials in terms of clothing and things like that. We haven't seen any questions about the winter, but maybe we'll come back to that in a moment in terms of staying warm during those winter months. But Chris, just over to you, just from the side of student accounts, like in terms of when, and feel free to talk about anything in terms of like tuition, like how it's assessed and how people have access to that account, and anything on that financial side you think would be helpful.
Well, I can provide general information. Unfortunately, I don't, or fortunately rather, I don't deal specifically with student accounts. But what happens is every student is issued what is referred to as McGill's e-bill. You're going to get one a semester. You're going to receive your first, your fall semester's first e-bill in early August, and you're going to have until the end of August to pay for it. You can access it through Minerva. You've all, I believe, had some experience with Minerva at this point. If you do run into difficulties, it is possible to have your tuition payment deferred, which you can do through student accounts. But that's honestly the extent of my experience with it. As a Canadian student, when I was at McGill, it was very straightforward. I was self-funded, so I just paid it straight out of my bank account through Minerva.
And for parents who are paying that bill, I believe that each of the students has the ability to give access to their parents to the bill paying portion of Minerva, not the grade portion of Minerva. So that's easy. And the easiest way to read those bills I have found was to go to the tab Account Summary by Term. Was the easiest way to understand the invoices.
There we go. Yeah. So Minerva, you both mentioned that. That is the other love affair you have to have at McGill, not just your McGill email, but your Minerva account. And this is where a lot of that content is displayed. And so, as Chris mentioned, in most cases, your tuition statement won't be available until after mid-August, and because that's when we absolutely know what the student has registered for in terms of courses, so what you're charged for, and it's kind of leading up to the term. So you usually will be assessed on your tuition, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but twice a year, so basically by semester, and then housing will vary, but typically it's by month that you'll get that payment. On the housing question, so Ava, I'm gonna guess you mentioned you lived in New Residence Hall, so did you have a roommate?
I did not. There were no roommates at McGill this for any of the first years except for Solon Hall, just because of COVID restrictions. So I was actually in a room with 2 double beds, and I had an extra bed. So like all the people in New Res or C4, they like people who would have had a room with a roommate had an extra bed.
Oh, lucky, lucky. So I don't think that's happening this September where they actually, and I see some chats coming in about roommates. So if you were assigned a double, and with the, again, with protocols from our public health, if double rooms are allowed, then you students might have a roommate. And the question was more about when you find out who your roommate is. But even if it's a floor mate, or you know who's going to be on your floor, that really all gets like it's assigned now, but you only find this information out when you actually get your key and you move in. Again, because circumstances change, with 1/3 of our students international, sometimes again students aren't able to come right away because of immigration. So we don't want you to meet somebody that might not ultimately get there during the regular move-in time. But so that anything related to housing, if you went through the student lottery and you're looking on Minerva, you should be able to see at this point which maybe building you've been assigned, or if you're on a wait list for a building. But in terms of knowing the actual room, if you have a roommate, all of that fun stuff, that will happen during your move-in week at the end of August.
Right. Jen, just one thing. You alluded to something earlier that U.S. parents may find confusing, especially if they've had kids at U.S. schools, which has to do with how billing works. Yes, you get the tuition bill up front, but also I just want to emphasize, as you mentioned, you do get the, at least in my experience, you get the residence part. It is, each and every month, you will, when you get up to McGill, you will actually sign a lease for your apartment, which works very differently than you're actually leasing your apartment, your residence from McGill, and you're paying rent monthly, whereas at U.S. schools, you're paying that housing fee up front. So just so people don't get confused by it.
No, perfect. Thank you. And it's always terminology. It's good to correct me whenever it makes more sense. Quick questions now about just course registration, because again, I think in terms of the process to get to McGill, that can also be stressful with Minerva. For students obviously coming in for the first time, trying out the registration system in July, maybe some courses weren't available or not. Ava and Claire, can you just speak to kind of the process of course registration and any advice you'd have about that in case a student doesn't have a course or wants a course, but maybe it's full, how they can proceed? So Ava first, then Claire.
Well, number one, I changed courses as I went through the add drop period, which is like the first 2-ish weeks of the semester, where you can change the courses that you registered for, like drop some, go into new ones. A lot of people are changing around all the time, so just keep going back to Minerva and checking if the class you want is available. I would like copy and paste the CRN, which is like the course number, into my notes in my computer, and I'll like go back every day and check it if I really want that class. And like sometimes you do get lucky and you can register for the class. There are also wait lists available, and you can get put on the wait list if there is room on the wait list. So I would just keep checking that. There also is a website called Get a Seat. Claire, I don't know if you've ever used it, but you pay, it's a blessing. You pay $1 and they text you when a spot opens up in the class. You have to be on it. I've already paid twice $2 for one class that I still really want, but I wasn't quick enough when I got the notification. So it doesn't always work, but it is really helpful. Yeah, so it's like getaseat.mcgill.ca. I think you could just look up Get a Seat McGill. And that's a good way to get into classes that you want. But also you change a lot during the add drop period. And like once you start going to classes, all mine were online, but I looked at the syllabi and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm so into this, or it was too small of a class, too big of a class, and I just changed around a lot. So like it will change. Even if you're set on a class, you might not end up being in it, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, that's great advice. I don't have too much to add. There is a free version of Get a Seat called, it's like McGill Tools. It's built by like McGill computer science students, so it's like beta testing sort of, but it does the same thing for free. It like texts you and emails you when a class is open. So yeah, throughout the summer and like especially during add drop, people are always like dropping classes and picking them up on a whim. So like for course registration now and like for future times, like I would register for as many as you want, as you can think of that look interesting. I would go and kind of like, I would go and like sit in on lectures and stuff for the first little bit of add drop. Some of the larger ones, you can just kind of like go and attend the first few classes, see if you're interested, and then like finalize the ones you want. But if everything is full, don't stress too much. I only had one class in August when I first came to McGill, and I just sat in on like 10 lectures and used Get a Seat, and everything opened up eventually. It just like there is so much movement in that period, so I would wait specifically until then.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So again, we keep coming back. This is a lot of information to take in, but there's so much fun that's going to come out of this as well. And obviously arriving on a new campus in a new city, there's lots of opportunity to meet people, but recommendations on just how to, find your McGill people, find your community in Montreal, joining clubs. How did you kind of start that process, I guess, when you first arrived? Claire, what about you? Because you did mention too, you got involved in a lot of things. Any ideas on just that first networking piece, we'll say?
Yeah, well, I was super excited to be at McGill, so I like joined everything anybody asked me to join. But I was on my Hall's Residence Council first year, which I think is like an excellent way to get involved. Like all of my best friends now, essentially I met in first year or like mostly in my dorm. So for sure, Residence Council, honestly, it sounds silly, but just like if there's a common space in your building, just like hang out there with your laptop and say hi to people. There'll be like an activities night at the beginning of every semester where like every club and student service like sets up their tables, and you can go through and they'll give you like pamphlets. They'll tell you what they do. They'll talk about like volunteering opportunities, that kind of thing. So there's like so many clubs and services you can join. SMU has a lot of paid jobs at a lot of student services as well, if you want to work a couple hours a week and meet cool people through that. And then yeah, just generally like also getting involved in like the Montreal community was something that was super helpful to me too, to be like outside of the McGill bubble. There's like a lot of cool nonprofits in Montreal that are always looking for volunteers. So I think there's some resources on the McGill website for it as well. I've worked like specifically like around like houselessness and stuff at like Head and Hands and Nazareth Community. So those are some really cool organizations you can check out as well. They're always looking for people.
Changing my screens here. So Claire, you didn't feel too overwhelmed initially because you said you got involved in so many things. Did you find it hard to balance classes with all the things you got involved in, or how did you kind of organize your time and stay focused?
First year was very like always like on experience. Like I definitely couldn't handle the level of things that I did then now as like an age 22-year-old. But I was only involved in, I did residence council, which I spent a lot of time on, and I was part of like 2 mental health clubs, and I worked at a nonprofit in Montreal. So that's what I did first year, and then every year since then I've pretty much done like 1 or 2 extracurricular things and a full like course load of classes, which is a lot. But if you like what you're doing, go for it, I would say. But I wouldn't go over like 1 or 2 extracurricular involvements just because McGill is very like academically intense, especially if you'll be taking like a 5-class course load.
Thank you for that. How about you, Ava? If you go back to your first year, feeling that sort of the new stuff happening and things.
Well, I had a very obviously different experience than what the incoming first years will likely have, just because the rules in the residence hall were like you had to designate 1 person to see at a time. But I was able to meet some people the first week, and I don't know, it was a lot of connecting through social media and like being in Facebook group chats and like being in your floor group chat as well. Sometimes like the floor rep would leave cookies or something in the common room and you could go in 1 at a time to get them. It was difficult, and also trying to like join clubs online was honestly a bit overwhelming, but I think it'll be very different this year, so I don't have a ton of experience with that.
Okay, thank you. We are almost out of time, but if everyone's able to stay with us for the next maybe 5 more minutes, we have a few more questions that we wanted to pose to you. So audience, if you can stick around for a little bit longer, that would be fabulous. And to our panelists as well, lots of things coming in at the last moment here. Neil, I'm going to turn over to you. Assuming the border opens, any recommendations on hotels to stay at when dropping a student off, or again, anything you can think of on the support side, how you can ease some parents' minds?
Oh, you know, I've been going to Montreal for years, so my kind of go-to hotel for that is the Sofitel, but the Hilton DoubleTree right across from McGill is also a great choice. There are lots of hotels in that area. They're mostly all very good and convenient to McGill. So I think they're all great choices. In terms of was there a follow-up question to that other than the hotels?
Just any advice you would get as you're, I mean, it's a nice transition too, like you're coming in and sort of leaving sons and daughters in residence and taking, off, but how do you stay connected, let's say, over the semester before they come back, maybe for American Thanksgiving or Christmas? Yeah.
We stay connected all the time. Yeah. So it's not, the way it is nowadays with phones and FaceTime. So I never feel like she's too far away, to be quite honest. And I would say to parents, Montreal's a great city. If you have the time and ability to take a few days, and when you come and visit, especially in the fall, it's the most beautiful time of year. I would try to spend a weekend there and enjoy the city and make sure that you do that and take advantage of that. I will say, I think Jen, you alluded to, we didn't speak about the winters. every kid should make sure they have as good a coat and as good a boots as possible, because it is colder than you are used to. I've spent many years there. I've been there when it's -20, I've been there when it's -40. It can get real cold at times, and the students get used to it very well. I have to say my children have never complained about it, so they tend to get used to it. I think if you're from LA or from a sunny place or Phoenix or from the South, it may be a little bit more difficult to get used to, but it can be done.
Like you said, buy a really nice warm winter jacket, boots, and keep in mind Montreal is known as an underground city. A lot of our campus can be like on the main campus a little bit connected, so you'll stay indoors a little bit more too, I think. Question just maybe about professors in terms of how you can connect with professors and maybe meet with them during office hours, like, because obviously that's a big piece of it too, to figure out, you know, years down the road what you ultimately want to study or focus on. Any advice, Ava and Claire, on just how you ended up working with professors or teachers' assistants? How did that work for you? Ava first, maybe?
I went to office hours. I was a frequent visitor with both professors and with TAs. And they're pretty easy to get in touch with, I think. Like, I was always able to go to office hours whenever I needed them. They answered emails really quickly, so also if you have questions, like, most professors are pretty thorough in their email responses. I stayed after class, even though it was on Zoom, for quite a few classes. And that was a really good way to have smaller conversations with a few other students and my professors. Like I did that for a Russian literature course, and a lot of people were staying up, not a lot, but a handful of kids would stay after class every week. Yeah, that's a really good way to connect with your professors.
Yeah, I would echo the same sentiment. Like, professors like answer emails fast and are pretty accessible. I would say like even meeting with TAs is super useful, because a lot of the times, like in larger classes, they'll be the ones grading your paper, so you want to know like what they want from you essentially. But going to office hours and like establishing relationships with profs, like especially in your faculty, is a great way, like besides like career advising, to get an idea of like kind of where you want to go. Like, a lot of my favorite history profs have like helped me look into like grad options, and told me about like how they did their research, and how they got funding. And if you are close enough with the professor, they can offer a lot of the times to like do research with you, or give you like paid or unpaid opportunities to like help them write books. It's really cool. So yeah, I would say like if you have a favorite prof whose lectures you love, just go to every office hours with something to say.
Very good advice. Don't be shy at McGill. Like, again, even if it's for a service you want to inquire about or ask a question, if it's a professor, you got to network and kind of put yourself out there a little bit and kind of be proactive, I guess is a good word we use at McGill, to get all the support and information you need. All right, we're going to wrap up with two really speed questions for all four of you here. First one, that advice piece. If you could, for our students, if you could go back to that first moment again and you were reliving this experience, what would you tell your former self about this process? Any recommendation, and always from the staff point of view and the parent point of view, any sort of reassuring words or advice you can give? Let's put Chris on the spot first. We'll start with Chris and go to Neil, Claire, and then Ava. Over to you, Chris.
Yeah, I think I'd have two pieces of advice for myself. The first is, don't wait until you feel like you're in trouble to reach out for support, whether you're talking to your TA or your professor, if you're accessing one of the services at McGill. Be proactive about it. You're going to save yourself a lot of stress and a lot of time. And the second is really get involved with your student associations. When I moved to Montreal, I was coming from the West Coast. I didn't know anyone out here, and that sort of became my basis for my entire support network throughout Montreal. They're still the people I talk to every day. So definitely connect with your peers and your student associations.
If I'm next, I'm going to echo a little bit about what Claire and Ava were just speaking about, and I base this also having seen my eldest daughter, go through 4 years. McGill's a big place. It can sometimes seem quite intimidating. I think my best advice is to try to make it feel small. And the way to do that is to connect with your professors, connect with your TAs, connect with your fellow students like in your major. My daughter was really able to do that. and to foster relationships with professors that to this day she still keeps in touch with and she considers friends. When she applied to grad school, they really, I know they had her back and really advocated for her. And, you know, just two examples just during the summers of what she did. She went, it was actually a McGill course. She went on an archaeological dig in Italy with Professor Totten, and they became very close during that dig. And she also met a lot of similar, you know, people who were similarly situated to her. And she's bonded and she's still great friends with all those people off the dig. The following summer, she did what's called an arts aria, I think it's called, research grant, where she did research with another professor and became very close with that professor as well. So she was really able to forge these relationships and spread out and got involved in student government, representing her major's society at the in the student council, etc. So making McGill feel small by making those connections is really very helpful.
Yeah, I would say something really similar. Like my number one advice is to just like be enterprising and don't be shy, because there's a lot available to you, but because everybody needs it, it's not as easily presented to you as I feel like it has been for some of my friends who go to like U.S. private schools. So you really have to like go looking for it, but as soon as you find it, it is there for you. So definitely like, yeah, don't be shy, get involved in whatever you can.
Am I next? Okay. I mean, I was going to say something similar. I was going to say don't be shy. I was thinking more socially. Like especially in COVID times, you do have to be proactive about reaching out to other people and like continuously talking to them. Yeah, that's something I would just say to first years especially. Like don't be shy about asking to go get lunch with someone, etc. The other thing I will say is read through the websites and see what McGill does have available, because there are a bunch of different websites and you do need to look through them carefully to really get a good grasp of what's offered here. And I have a third piece of advice that has to do with course registration that I really wanted to say, which is if you have a certain prefix that you're thinking you want to take a history class, like the prefix will be HIST, look under other prefixes as well. For example, like Indigenous Studies, you would look under INDG, and those are often cross-listed as courses. So like be creative when you're looking into courses in terms of what kinds of courses you want to take. They're under a bunch of different departments, especially in arts. I can't say really for sciences or eng, but yeah, be creative with looking through the course lists and like signing up.
I like that. That sort of be sort of intuitive and then also take that initiative is always a really good idea. I had one last question, but then one just popped up that I think is important to talk about too. We did talk about weather. Typically the other question we get is about language. So French, coming into La Belle Ville de Montréal, and if you spoke French or not, or how you really navigated the city. And so from Chris, Claire, and Ava too, because I think different perspectives. Thoughts on French? Did you embrace it? Did you need it? Did you take it? All of that fun stuff. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I wouldn't be overly intimidated if you don't speak French. You'll get by just fine through the majority of Montreal, especially in the downtown core where McGill is located. All the people working in the shops and the various industries around Montreal are speaking both French and English, and they're not going to give you any trouble about not being able to speak French. That said, there are great resources through McGill and through the community itself in Montreal for learning French if you'd like to. I'm still in the process of learning French myself. I think I've actually learned more Spanish in my time in Montreal than I've learned French, but I'm getting around to it. But yeah, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, you really like don't need it. I would say like if you get here and you spend your university years here and you think about like establishing like more of a life here, you are gonna like need to do it pretty, at least at a basic level, for like a lot of positions and stuff. But finding like on-campus work, like if you get like a kitchen job or like a back of house job, they're never gonna require you to speak French. And nobody's ever gonna be like rude to you unless you are like far out. And if you know even a little bit of French, like just like people really appreciate it when you try. My French is okay. I get like lost in like any sort of like complex sentence or situation, but people like love it when you try. So.
I would say the same as everyone has said. I don't speak French. I know a little bit, but you also get used to reading signs and stuff that are in French. And like there are just a lot of things that you'll pick up intuitively just by living in the city. But by no means do you need to know French. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, now this is the last speed question, and then we're going to wrap up. I think it was Claire at the beginning that mentioned you should bring a fan if you're coming to residences, because we do hit this sort of heat wave in September and October when it gets quite humid. Other things, if you can think of something actually tangible that you would recommend a student have, or when you're traveling here, anything that comes to mind, or even just as a student through these years. And Chris, something that would come to mind too. Any advice, last minute words of advice or tangible things that it's good to have as a McGill student? Chris, it looks like you want to say something first. We're going to go to you, and then let's go to Ava, Claire, and Neil as well.
Yeah, something that people often forget when they move to Montreal is that if you're taking any prescription medication, you either want to stock up on it before you come or have your prescription transferred to a local pharmacy. You don't want to miss out on that. Beyond that, bring a sense of adventure. It's a wonderful city to explore, and I think that's going to really leave an impact on you.
Yeah, I guess I would, oh, sorry. Like last bit of advice is just like to get involved in the city. I think like being involved outside of McGill's campus as well as on campus is super important. And yeah, the tangible thing, honestly, the only thing coming to mind right now is a fan, but I would highly stress that again. Yeah.
I would say for living in res, bring a pair of shoes that you will wear around your residence hall. So like slippers, I wore Crocs for just walking to other people's rooms, going down to the dining hall if you're lucky to have one in your residence. Yeah, just like something to keep indoors. Yeah, and easy to slip on.
Love it. That's a really good suggestion. Neil, do you remember back to anything you were purchasing and sending over or bringing at the next semesters and such, or what you're planning for September?
No, no, this is not it. Honestly, I will not be the one going up to Canada. This will be my wife in charge. I will say for students, and I remember Ava you were in res for a little bit of the second term, but when you did come back, it was during the March break. Kids were bringing their skis up to go skiing in the Laurentians, and if you get the chance, I would also get out of the city and enjoy the great recreation that really is just a stone's throw outside the city, whether it's cross-country skiing, regular, downhill skiing, skating. Bring your skates if you want to skate, and that's about it, because it's beautiful up there.
Perfect. And we do have a skating rink on campus when the weather permits, so you will use them. Great ideas, great suggestions. Thank you so much. For me, when I reflect on my time at McGill, because it has gone by super fast, is that take the time to explore, but remember these semesters go by quickly. You got 4 months and then 4 months, and then you have 4 months between May and August. That's not full-time session. So all of these things you want to get involved in and you want to do, it can be jam-packed, but it will go fast. So enjoy every moment, take the time to breathe and explore, as we said. So that wraps up our session. I really want to thank our panelists for being here this evening and providing, I think, so much kind of honest information, but very accurate and also very authentic. So thank you for all of that you've brought to this panel. Thank you again to Alumni Relations for really setting this up and preparing our students. Technically, again, we would normally be in the regions to do this, so it's virtual, but we're going to virtually send you off and get ready to come to McGill. Obviously, resources, I think Ava mentioned it too, there are a lot of websites. So please make sure to visit the First Year Office website. If you do have questions that you want to reach Chris and his team at Campus Life and Engagement, and again, there's a lot of that operational information about arriving in Montreal, you can reach out to Clay, C-L-E, at McGill.ca. And again, lots of resources on their website, as Chris mentioned earlier. So please take the time to review that as well. Thanks again to all our newly admitted students and families and support networks for being here today. You're embracing a lot of information. We really appreciate it, and we hope you have a really, really great summer. These send-offs, as I mentioned earlier, are not over. That mailbox we talk about, that McGill.ca mailbox, you should be getting some invitations shortly to some kind of exclusive networking events on Brazen. And so this is going to be where parents and students from around the world can also connect. And, you know, hey, you're from Philly, I'm from Philly, and we're both coming to McGill, and you might be able to connect that way. So that will be something I think you should partake in before you arrive on campus. You'll also have our McGill alumni page, which again, you'll see a lot more information and details coming up. And I think that's it. Let me just make sure I have my list. Want to make sure I can cover everything. Congratulations. I think, again, round of applause for all of you. You're persevered through this year, and you will be ready for your McGill experience. So we absolutely look forward to welcoming you to Montreal in September. Have a very safe and relaxing summer, and we look forward to seeing you soon. So we're going to end, and we're going to just end our session with a video. So enjoy our McGill anthem video, and take care, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight.
Born from a will, made here by dreamers and risk takers, by makers and big thinkers. Through trial and error, we face what's ahead, staying true to the voice that never fails us. Keep learning. We were made for this, made by lamplight and late nights, by salut and goodbyes, by questioning everything and feeding our curiosity, by testing our resilience, by finding our limits. By pushing forward and by breaking through, by finding a new way, our own way. We're made where ideas are built and built upon, where we come together and we rise above. We are made by McGill.